Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar session, Customizing CK-12 FlexBooks and Adaptive Practice. I'm Lindsay, one of the CK-12 team members, and my colleague Katie and I will be running today's webinar. Many of you who are joining us today are participating in the CK-12 Certified Educator Program, so welcome back to all of you. If you are brand new to the Certified Educator Program and would like to learn more and officially register with us, you can visit ck12.org/certified and press register to get started. Just a reminder that our revamped program includes 4 components: 2 on-demand sessions that you can watch on your own schedule, 3 core live webinars, matching assignments for all of the sessions, and a final form requesting your certificate. Since this session counts as one of the core live sessions, you'd already be a third of the way through that requirement at the end of the hour. This program is free. We're happy to have you join us at any time. At the end of today's webinar, we can discuss more about the Certified Educator Program for any participants with questions, or you can type any questions in the Q&A window for our team to answer privately. Before we get started, I do want to make sure everyone's comfortable with the Zoom platform. You should see 2 different window options for Zoom, one that says Q&A and one that says chat. During today's presentation, whenever you have a question about CK-12, please post it in the chat window. That's the window that we monitor, and I'll be asking Katie questions occasionally, and you'll see Monique and Carl and Tuscany, other team members, answering questions throughout the session in the Q&A window. The chat window is really a place for community conversation, and you all have been doing a great job with that so far. Keep introducing yourself, tell us where you're from, what you teach, if you know what the plans are for reopening in the fall, anything you'd like to talk about, do it in the chat window. Just know that you need to change it to say all panelists and attendees if you want everybody to be able to see your message. So all panelists and attendees is where you need to send those messages. I also want to mention that we are recording this webinar, and it will be available on our webpage within 24 hours at ck12.org/webinars in the archive section. So today's session is one that has a lot of content, and if you do need to revisit it later on, just know that the recording will be available to you. Let me introduce you to my colleague, Katie, who's going to talk to you about what we're learning today.
Thanks, Lindsay. So today's session is going to cover the following topics. We'll start by talking about FlexBook editing. We'll talk about customizing versus combining FlexBooks, rearranging content, editing content, and even creating your own FlexBook and lessons. We'll also talk about curating related content with that, and then we'll move into practice, customizing CK-12 practice into quizzes, how you might use these quizzes, and then what those reports look like based on the way that you used a quiz in CK-12. And we'll wrap up with some points about what you can do after customization. So whether that's assigning, sharing, publishing, and even putting your content on a school's page.
Okay, I want to mention that we have 2 resource pages that you might find handy for this session. The first will help you with customizing FlexBooks, and we have a tiny URL that's on the screen. We'll also put it in the chat window, but tinyurl.com/CK12 ADVFB 2019, as in CK-12 Advanced FlexBook 2019. And then a second resource is available to you on customizing practice. And you can find it at the tiny URL CK-12 Custom AP 2019. You're welcome to open those up in the tiny URL, download them, save them for later. They're really just a reference sheet for you to use if you need it. Okay, as we go through this session, we'll be covering the big ideas behind customization of FlexBooks and practice. At the same time, you might find that you want more information on certain pieces, whether now or down the road when you do more customization. While we're happy to stay on afterward and answer any questions, you can find more information and step-by-step directions about the following in our quick overviews section of the CEP FlexBook, or they're in a quick overviews playlist on our YouTube channel. And so the quick overviews that we have are on finding, uploading, formatting images, finding and using embed codes for images, for videos, interactives, and Google slide presentations, creating and curating modalities on CK-12 to add as related content, including lesson plans and videos, etc. Using CK-12's math editor, creating your own questions for quizzes, both the general overview and specifics based on the type of question, and then also multi-concept assignments. So with that, let's get started with editing CK-12 FlexBooks.
Great, thanks, Lindsay. We're going to first talk about customizing versus combining FlexBooks. So if you're starting with a CK-12 FlexBook or one that another user has made, you can simply click Customize, and that will make a copy that you can begin to edit. If you want to pull from multiple existing books, you can use the Add to FlexBook textbook option, and that will allow you to add individual lessons, chapters from our legacy content, or whole books to an existing or brand new FlexBook. You can also go to your library to start a FlexBook or FlexBook 2.0 from scratch, and you'll find any work that you've customized or created in that library as well. Now, when you customize a FlexBook, you can use the options on the table of contents level to delete sections or even whole chapters if you don't need all the content that we have in our books. You can reorder lessons, and this can be especially helpful if you're adding in new content. Any new content you create will show up at the bottom of the full table of contents for a FlexBook, and then you'll just drag it wherever you want it to be. Now, from within the FlexBook editor, you can also add new chapters and create new sections. And those sections can be used as more of a traditional text-based lesson or as a bucket to embed media or some kind of combination that you'll see across our site. One note about editing, the best practice is to stick with a single tab. This way you can work sequentially and you're not kind of jumping all over the place, and then your updates will be saved in order as you work your way through, and you won't mistakenly save something older over the newer content. In addition to the actual book order and options there, you have the option to make some edits directly within a lesson. So if you click on the pencil edit icon, which is the icon next to any section of a FlexBook, or if you create a new FlexBook lesson, what we call a read, then you'll have access to this editor. There you can directly adjust or write any text. You can see the option available there. And you can use our toolbar for some special formatting and media options. I do want to point out 4 specific icons. The first is our math editor. So you can have math text or just a quick conversion with that new M that we have available to convert LaTeX coding into that. The next one is our image upload option. This includes an option to upload a file and make sure that you add the needed attributions and licensing notes before you upload that. And then the other one I point out is our media option. This allows you, when it's not grayed out because you're in some bulleted point or a header, just click into regular text and that will be available for you. And it allows you to embed interactives from our site. You can embed video links. You can even use a standard embed code from other platforms to include that content in our system. Now, when you're making edits, and I will go through all of this live in a second, so I know I'm kind of just breezing through it to start, but when you make an edit in a section of FlexBook, you have a few other tabs there that you can work with. The first one after edit is our resources tab. And this would allow you to upload an answer key if you wrote questions. You could upload a lab as long as you own the rights to it. You just have to make sure that you upload the file here and that it fits under our license. Then when you save it, these will show up under resources in the toolbar for that particular section. The next tab over is our details tab. Here you can add in or adjust lesson objectives, vocabulary, and if you scroll down, there's an attribution section where you can add in additional sources, editors, components to make sure that you're cleanly identifying and attributing your content correctly. Once that is saved, these show up under details, that same toolbar, but all the way at the bottom under more, you'll see the concept details option, and you can see that same description, learning objectives, and all the way at the bottom there, the author for this particular lesson. Now, If you are using a FlexBook 2.0, and only if you're in our newer platform, you're not kind of creating an older book or just a standalone read, you'll have the option to have what we call related content. Here you can see the matching modalities that we have already curated, and you can click on the little red X to remove any of these that you don't want. You can also, if you click the add a modality button there, add in additional modalities that we have in our system tagged to that concept that you search for, or even swap out practice with a quiz right from this editor page. But I'll talk more about that in the second part of today's webinar. Now, once these are saved, you'll see at the beginning on any of our start pages, the other ways to learn. You'll see those same modalities show up there for learning. The lesson plan modality is just for teachers. All of the rest would also show up for students. And then if you click start and you're in the particular lesson, once again, that super handy toolbar has a piece called related content, and those will all show up on the right-hand side. So you have easy access to those other learning modalities, kind of whether you're accessing them from the main page or within a particular lesson. So that was super duper fast. So we're gonna slow it down, and I'm gonna take over this screen and I'm gonna show you what this looks like live on our site. So the first option is to customize a FlexBook. That's probably the easiest option to work with on our system. You can start with one of our lessons itself or one of our FlexBooks itself and click customize to just tweak it, starting with the core content. So I can get to a FlexBook by scrolling down and looking at options to teach here today, or clicking on the subjects menu, which would get me to the same place. But let's start with a physical science FlexBook. So this is one of our newer 2.0 FlexBooks. It's got this streamlined, cleaner, less distractive interface. And for these, if I want to customize this book, I say, this is great, but maybe I don't need all 22 chapters. Or maybe I teach an integrated science class where I teach both physical and earth science in my class. So if that's the case, I'm going to start by clicking customize. So once I click customize here, under that choose option, it will bring me to the editor. Now, the first thing that we recommend is that you retitle this book. This book was originally the CK-12 physical science for middle school book, but we often recommend that you put your school initials or something like that, like my school physical science book, and that will help me. And we're going to actually make this, we said physical and earth science. So that'll remind me that this is the one that I'm working with, and I'm not confusing it with the CK-12 traditional book as we go from here. So all I did was click customize, and I retitled this book. I can go ahead down here and say, we're not going to get to electricity and magnetism in this particular quarter that I'm working with, or this particular year. So I'm going to go ahead and just click on this X, and you can see that it says remove there. So I'm going to click on that. It says, are you sure you want to delete this section? Go right ahead. Because if I remove them now, I can always go back to the original CK-12 book and snag those chapters again. So it's not that I am removing them from the CK-12 system. You cannot mess up our content. Do not worry about that. I'm simply saying, I don't need those in my FlexBook right now. I got this covered here. So I have this book, but I only have the content from the physical science book right now. I don't have the earth science content so far. So I don't want to add a new tab and mess myself up. I'm going to save my work right here. And you'll see this now says my school physical and earth science. And the other way to know that it's mine is it says by Jumpstart D, which is my Jumpstart demo account. And instead of customize, I now have the edit option. So that means that I own this book, I can make changes to it. And any book you own is automatically already in your library because that's where any customized content lives. So we're gonna go back and we're gonna click on our subjects menu, which right here is available this way. And I wanna take part of the earth science book. So I'm gonna go ahead and click on earth science. It's gonna open that book, still working in a single tab. I've saved all my work. And instead of clicking choose and customize, I actually want to take this book and I want to add it to the other book that I'm already working on. I don't want to create another second copy. I just want one book with both parts together. So when I do that, I'm going to choose the Add to FlexBook 2.0 option. In older books, you'll see the general Add to FlexBook option. If you are in 2.0 already, you have to stay in that environment. So I'm going to add this to an existing 2.0 FlexBook, and I could create a brand new one right here. That's actually the way you would convert an old book to a new book, is by clicking Create a New FlexBook, and you can pull any content from a previous book into 2.0. But here, this is the My School Physical and Earth Science book that I want to work with today. I'm going to add it to here, and I'm going to click OK. And it says, this has been successfully added. Now, I'm still looking at the other page because I didn't click Customize. But if you remember, I said any work that you're working on is found in your library. In the main original homepage, you see a library button at the top. In the 2.0 environment, you can find it under your name right here. And I can click on My Library. And you'll see that My School Physical and Earth Science book is right here. I can click on it and open it up. And in addition to the physical science sections from 1 to 19 that I kept, or 20, I guess, I have all of these earth science sections that have now been added at the end of this book. And that's exactly where any new content, any new book that you add gets added at the end there. And I can go ahead and I can go back and edit some more. So I click Choose and I click Edit, and it opens up the editor again. And now I have the ability, if I scroll all the way down, you'll see I can remove any of these sections. I can take sections and say we're going to talk about Earth's materials before Earth's energy, or maybe flip that back where it belongs. I can open up and combine the solar system. If I want to do the solar system and beyond the solar system all in a single chapter, I would just expand both chapters, and then I can drag sections from one chapter to another. So I could put all of this in a single larger chapter on the solar system and beyond. And then what I would do is I'd say, okay, for this chapter, we're going to retitle this Solar System and Beyond. And that pencil edit icon at the chapter level, we go down here, this one right here allowed me to edit this and beyond piece. Now, if I pulled everything I wanted out of there, I can delete the rest of it and simply remove that chapter. Knowing that if I needed that lesson again, I could go back to the CK-12 lesson and go ahead and pull it out there and add it back into my piece. So let's go ahead and pick a lesson that we're going to edit directly. So I have to expand the chapter option, and I can go down and I can pick a particular lesson. And this little pencil option says I'm going to edit this lesson. Now, the first thing that I need to do to edit this lesson is I need to name it. If I like the name Scientific Notation, I'm good to go. I don't have to change this. It doesn't necessarily make sense to have my school, my school, my school all the way through a book. So I'm just going to keep this as Scientific Notation. And now I get bumped into the particular piece. So here you can see that I can change this, most of the stars pictured in this view, and I could say in this image, edit text like that. We have some options here for some basic formatting pieces, from headers to regular paragraph. This lovely little text right here is in our math editor. So you can see that and open it up. And if you know code, you can go ahead and edit the code to make this work out. Or you could play with this drop-down menu and add different pieces. And if you wanted to see that from scratch, then you would just click anywhere you wanted, click on the math editor, it would open it up and go from here. Today we're just giving you a super fast overview. So go ahead and play around if you wanted to do this, see how that works out. This image, if I click on it, I can click on insert or edit this image. That's the same thing I would do if I was adding a new image. Notice it has all the copyright filled out, and I have some image options on the next tab there. And then right here, we have an embedded media option. So if I want to see what this is, once again, I click on that, and then I click on the matching part at the top, and it looks like this is a video that's embedded there. And that's great. I could swap it out with new embed code for a different video, or I could just simply reinsert that existing one there. So those are all available here in terms of the editor options. At the top of this lesson, we see our resources tab where I can upload a file that I want to share with my students. we see the details tab, which has a description, learning objectives, vocab, and most importantly, our author attribution piece that carries over when I add it from another book. So that's okay right there. And then this related piece. So here I have related content. And once again, I can curate this content. So I could say, maybe I don't want this Flix Interactive. I'm just going to delete that and remove it. And maybe remove another video and say, oops, I actually wanted that video in there. Or I want to add a new modality. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. I can scroll through. Anything grayed out is already clicked and included. But let's go ahead and add this video instead back into here. I'm going to add that selected option. I could even here add content from my library. There's nothing tagged to the same concept, so there's nothing showing up right there, but I could search for scientific notation, see what we get. We get some options to work with. Or once again, I said this is where I can update a quiz. It says I can select a quiz. I have one tag to this lesson already, but we're going to get into that later. So I'm going to just leave this as is and close it out. So I've made a little bit of changes on related. An text change here. I left the image. I left the math text in the video. If I got called away in the middle of something, I would just click keep as draft. But if I want my students to see my changes, I'm going to finalize this, knowing I can always go back and edit it some more. That finalize just means finalize this version, send it out to my kids, and I'm good to go. And from here, you'll see that the word changed from this view to this image right there. And that under the toolbar, under related content, I have the Plix, the real-world application, the video, and that other video that I swapped in place there. So those are all available right here to work with. That gives you just kind of a sense of the different things you could do at the biggest level for editing a FlexBook, and a quick little snapshot at trying some of those out. And we hope you'll explore from there. So let's stop and maybe take some questions and see what I can answer.
Sure, that was a lot of information. So just a few reminders for everybody is that we are recording this webinar and it will be available to you at ck12.org/webinars as soon as tomorrow. So if you need to revisit anything that Katie's shown you, you'll be able to do that. A couple other reminders, Katie, of people were asking about the cost of CK-12. CK-12 is absolutely free. There is no cost. There's no premium version. There's no upgraded version. There's no advertising on our site. It is free. So you can use it free always. Katie, maybe the first thing I want you to show is that several people were asking about FlexBooks in other languages. And I think it'd be a good reminder to show them the Google Translate button.
Sure, I'd be happy to do that. So at the bottom of any of our lessons, if you scroll all the way down, we have an embedded option for Google Translate. So I can select this language. Let's see, I'll pick French. And you can see that it has converted all of the text itself into that language. It doesn't automatically convert the videos, so keep that in mind as you go. But all of this core text, as well as the kind of platform itself, sujet for subjects, and all of the rest of that is available there. So any student, parent, teacher can go ahead and use that option to help kids. We often see students where they have the same text in English and then on their phone in another language or something like that, where they can learn the English vocabulary, but still understand the context in their primary language. So I'm going to go ahead and swap that back so that I'm not stuck in French for the rest of the thing, and we are good to go.
Excellent. A few questions were related to collaborative editing. I know you were starting to talk about some best practices, but one question is it possible to collaborate with somebody in customizing a FlexBook so they'll appear as an author? And then, oh, it just disappeared. I think just what would that process look like if two people wanted to work together on a book, or a team of people wanted to work on a book?
Yeah, so we've had a number of different schools create like a science at something school account, or specifically a biology email address at that account. And they kind of use that account as their core content account for that school or district. That's totally fine, but it doesn't work like Google Docs. Only one person should be editing a FlexBook at any point in time, just like I should only have one tab out. All of the edits I did, I'm still in this single tab that you can see here. And so that practice is true for one person or multiple people if you happen to be sharing a district or school account for a particular book. Just make sure that you are going in at different times and doing that work, or that you're kind of structuring and planning outside and then putting the book together in one account at the end there. But if you are making updates, just make sure only one person is ever editing, and then they save all their work, they close out, and the next person goes in just like you would in a different tab.
If you're getting serious about creating a book with team members or, with some collaborators, just know that we're always available at CK-12 to talk you through that process. So if you were ever to email jumpstart@ck12.org or support@ck12.org, you could be directed to one of us and we could help talk you through that process if you need some additional tips. Katie, a question about copyright. What are the copyright laws regarding FlexBooks? In other words, if I'm editing, does that remove copyright? Tell us about the attribution.
So our terms of use, kind of your license to us if you're writing new content, or our license externally. We license externally all our content under Creative Commons non-commercial use. You cannot sell any of our content. You cannot, that's basically the big thing. You can customize it, you can adjust it. And then if you are putting content in our system, we have pretty clean pieces. It's actually, if you have questions, the terms of use, or I'm going to go ahead in here for like an image that you're uploading into our system. We try to make it pretty clear in the image upload piece so that it's not a question about what you can and can't put into our system. But the general gist is if someone owns the copyright for that and it's not licensed more broadly, that allows for basically anything except attribution. So public domain or attribution only are kind of the big ones that you can work with. So let's go ahead. I'm going to just pick the same lesson so I don't have to resave a new copy. And if I click on a new image in there and you have questions, that's a good quick reference. But if you are, let's say, borrowing content, using content from something that you've licensed or you paid for, that should not be in our site, whether that's in our practice or quizzes or our lesson itself. But either you hold the copyright and this is the license you're granting us, or you don't hold the copyright and these are your options. When it clicks none of the above, it says we do not accept images outside of those license options. So hopefully that helps you a bit with that licensing.
Okay, please keep your questions coming in to the Q&A window. We're going to pause again here shortly to answer more questions. I'm going to go ahead and take the screen back from Katie, and we're going to talk about the next part of this presentation, which is practice versus quizzes. We will also talk about publishing your FlexBooks and some other questions that I can see coming in about publishing and distributing your FlexBooks. But right now, let's talk about quizzes. In our FlexBook 2.0 platform webinar, we discussed CK-12 adaptive practice. It adjusts to student skill levels and even offers recommendations for further learning. You're always more than welcome to use our adaptive practice as is, but if you want to tailor student practice, you can create what we call a quiz on CK-12. So before Katie goes into a demo of how to create a quiz, I want to make sure you understand the differences between quizzes and adaptive practice. So what they have in common is they both can pull from our database of 150,000 math, science, and spelling questions. However, quizzes also give you the option to create your own questions and use them. You can assign quizzes like practice, but student reports are based on the percentage of questions they got right. Unlike practice, which aims for a goal of 10 correct, regardless of how many questions are completed. You also have various options for quizzes, from picking the order of questions to setting time limits. Remember that CK-12 won't override any of these choices by adapting to student performance or stopping them to provide recommendations. If you want those features, you need to use CK-12 adaptive practice as is. All right, let me hand it off to Katie to start working our way through this.
Great, thanks, Lindsay. So the first thing is, if you want to create a brand new quiz, you would do it the same way that you would for creating a FlexBook. And I showed you how to find a FlexBook in your library, but in your library, there's also this Create New button, and you can see there the FlexBook textbook or FlexBook 2.0 option. And under that, the option to create a brand new quiz. So that's part one. There you can pull existing questions in our database or create your own. And then the other option, which would pull existing questions to start with, is to click the customize option. So that you can access when you're in practice, when you're in a 2.0 lesson with attached practice, kind of different options across our system. So create a brand new one from scratch with your library, and I'll show you how to do that live, and also the FlexBook piece from the same place, or click customize. Now, the first thing you want to do is you want to pick a title for your quiz. And I generally recommend that it indicates the purpose or the topics that you want to cover in that quiz, because that will make it drastically easier to use than if you simply put a date or something like that as your title. You have the option to put a description. This is internal just for you in the editor, just kind of a reminder of what you were putting in this quiz or why it was created, but that doesn't show up externally. So just remember that as you go. Once you have that title and description, if you want that, the right side options include a number of different pieces. This includes the number of attempts or tries that a kid has for, or learner has for kind of doing this particular quiz. Underneath that is a time limit. So we have teachers and use quiz options or quizzes in many different ways. Sometimes it's just that they want to customize our practice and they want to tailor it and use it as a homework assignment. So they may want unlimited attempts and unlimited time. Other ones are using that as a formative or a summative assessment, maybe a final exam or a quiz or something like that. And they want to set a specific time limit, and the kid only or students only get one attempt within there, or maybe 2 attempts if you're doing something specific. There are ways to dismiss an attempt if something glitches and you need to give a particular student an extra try if you do limit it. But in general, think about, is this more of a homework where they can take it as many times as they want, or do I want to limit the number of attempts as I go through? Underneath those 2 options is the option for language. If you are creating a brand new quiz, we have a couple options, and you can write your own questions in Portuguese or Spanish, I think are the other 2 options right now. But in general, you'll see the language choice is English, and that will allow you to pull the most number of questions from our system, because the majority of them right now are still in English. Under that, you'll see options for hints, solution, and shuffle questions. So you can allow students to see hints just like they would if they were practicing or doing an assignment. You can show a full step-by-step solution where that's available. So think about kind of a math problem where, in addition to the right or wrong answer, they can see the whole worked out problem. And then if you were using it as a quiz versus homework, you might want to consider the shuffle question option if students were actually going to be in the same room and wanted to kind of do quiz questions in a different order. So they're all working through the same questions, but not at the same time in terms of when they get any particular question. We have a newer feature that just came out called allowing the students to pause and resume their quiz. So originally this was set as you go in, you take a quiz, you sit down, you finish it, you turn it in. But for the teachers that are using this more as an assignment versus a quiz, they would want students to be able to go in, do some of their work, save it, head to another class period, come back, finish their homework. And so by clicking that allow students to pause and resume option, you're allowing students to actually cumulatively work through their quiz and not have to restart every time like you would if you were taking a true quiz from there. Once you've picked your general settings there, it's time to pick your concepts and questions. So if you started by clicking customize on practice, you'll see the first concept already included. So you can see some concepts kind of already included there. This usually defaults to about 20 randomly selected questions and tries to give a balance of question types as well as easy, medium, and hard questions as you go. If you haven't customized practice and you want to start from scratch with a quiz, or you just want to add another concept, another question set to this, you click on that add question set option, and then you can search or browse through CK-12 to find math and science or spelling concepts that are available there. Or you can click on that create new questions in the top right option there. Now, if you're including multiple concepts, you can see the order of the concepts noted. So here I have 2 concepts included. It says 1 and 2. If I just hovered over that number 2, I could drag the box first and reorder my concepts within my quiz. But you would still be doing, except with the shuffle question option, kind of those questions in those buckets of one question type and then the other question type. Now, once any concept is included, you can adjust the number of questions. This point, the system is going to randomly pick a new set of easy, medium, and hard questions from various different types. And it's a super easy way if you just want to reset the number of questions. But it will override any hand-picked questions. It's going to pull a new batch every time you do that. And the system will warn you with a pop-up, so don't worry about that. Just kind of keep that in mind if you see that that's what's happening there. Now, as I just referenced, you could handpick your questions. So if you were going to do that, you click on the pencil edit icon. That's our edit option across the system. So just hover over the box to see it. And when you click on it, it opens up in this case, 5 randomly selected questions and any other questions that are automatically available for that concept. In this case, it looks like there's about 78 questions for chemistry for scientific notation. And so you could then pick and choose, preview your questions, rearrange the order, whatever you wanted to do from there. The other option, if I clicked the add question option at the top within a concept or create new questions, is that I would use first thing I have to do to build my new question is to pick my question type. So once you're there, you get to pick multiple choice, select all that apply, true, false, fill in the blank, short answer, drag and drop, which is more like a categorizing. So I'm dragging things into different categories, highlighting, which is kind of like circling the right answer or tapping the right answer. And the final one is a discussion question option. You'll see these in a lot of our Plix interactives, but there is no right or wrong answer. So think of it as kind of a writing prompt where a student wouldn't be putting that content in there. They'd be having a discussion external to the quiz itself. Now, after you pick your question type, you're going to fill in the pieces. So this includes the question itself, any answers or distractors, hints if you want to add them. You get to pick the level of difficulty of your question, and you can add in any details. Now, if you're creating a question, so that like create new question option in a brand new concept, then you do need to pick the concept that you want to associate with. So right there at the bottom, it says add concept, and you can pull one from CK-12, or you can tag a new question to a lesson you have in your library or a read that you have in your library. So once I've done this whole thing and I click create, any new question is going to show up at the bottom of the questions within that concept, just like any new section shows up at the bottom of a FlexBook. From there, you would drag it to wherever you want it within the quiz itself, just like I did for dragging lessons within a FlexBook. Okay, so you've made a quiz, and what are you going to do with it? You have 3 options for how to use that quiz. So the first option, which I kind of referenced in that related content piece, was that you could swap out the practice in a 2.0 FlexBook. Or if it's one that you wrote from scratch and there's no assessment in it, you could just add that quiz to it. At that point, if you assign the lesson with the attached quiz, you're assigning both the text content or embedded content kind of as a single, just general piece. You don't get any report separate for that. And the quiz that's attached to it is what is giving you a class report for that particular lesson. Now, if you didn't want to change that, you wanted to practice as is in your lesson, you can assign these quizzes directly. So if I was going to do that, that would just have a separate assignment for my students, and they would take the quiz with nothing attached to it, and you get a report accordingly. And the last option is to use these custom questions by embedding them into the lesson itself. So where you saw that video embedded in a science lesson, I could embed my question in a lesson for learning. We call these inline questions. They can be a great help to students, helping them learn as they work their way through a lesson. The one key thing to know is that you don't get a report if you embed your questions as an inline questions. They're geared towards learning versus assessment, and students have to successfully complete them. So they're not going to be able to move on to the next question until they get the first one right. And because of that, if you plan to use questions as inline questions, we highly recommend that you use the feedback options when you're making questions, so that helps students kind of work their way through and understand what they were getting wrong and what they want to do to get that question correct and learn that content as they go. So the first two pieces I talked about, swapping out your practice and assigning a 2.0 lesson, they generate a report for that particular quiz. The report score is based on the percent of questions that were correct out of the total number. And this is different than the practice. So our practice questions have a goal of 10 correct. And when they successfully complete that assignment, just like if a kid did their homework, even if they got a question wrong, they would still get full credit. The practice score is 100%. The quiz score, on the other hand, is more of an assessment. And that's why they get that 85%, which would be based on correct answers versus total questions. One other thing is for quizzes that have been attached to a 2.0 lesson, you get additional information under the lesson insights. If you click on that, you'll see, unlike practice, which gives you the time and a skill level, quizzes give you the time on the lesson and the quiz score, that percent score for that particular quiz. And as we move forward, you'll see more things like engagement and other pieces under those insights for 2.0 lessons. So that's one of the big benefits for using that. So once again, a ton of information. I'm going to go through this a little more slowly. We're going to go live on our site and walk you through some options as we go from here. So I'm going to start by going to my library. And from here, I could create a new FlexBook, a new FlexBook 2.0, or a brand new quiz. And that would bump me into the quiz editor. The other option, however, let's say I wanted to make a quiz for this particular lesson that I was just on. I'm going to go back to the lesson itself. And under this view practice choice here, because I own this lesson, this is in one of my customized FlexBooks, I have this option that says switch to quiz. So just keep that in mind, that that's one of the options that you have here because I own that. If you don't see it, it means you're looking at a book that you haven't been customizing or editing. If I want to make a new quiz, next to preview, I click on this down arrow and I have the option to customize this practice. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to customize this practice and I'm put directly in a new quiz. So I'm going to call this scientific notation. Maybe a notation, and we're going to say for June. Just so I know that this is the one that I'm working off of. I can set my attempt number, my unlimited options. I can shuffle questions. I want my students, I'm going to use this as a homework assignment so they can pause and resume their work. And let's even shuffle questions for a second. And here, they don't need 20 questions on here. We're going to just bump this down to, let's say, 8 questions. When I click outside of it to save it, it does give me this warning. It says, we're going to reset this. We're going to pull a new batch of balanced questions from our system. Are you sure you want to do that? Yes, please continue. So from here, I set my quiz features. I adjusted my question number here. And I can actually go in and edit this. Let's click on that pencil edit icon for a second. We're going to open this up. And I can actually see these particular questions that are within here. So here, I'm going to say I want the scientific notation piece here. It's a convenient and accurate way to represent I like that question. We're going to keep it there. Maybe I want to look at another question and add this in here. We're good to go. And I'm going to try to adjust this order. These drag arrow options aren't working. If you remember, I actually clicked shuffle questions. So the first thing I'm going to do up here, I can, let's say I don't want this one. I like all the rest of these. We're good to go. I am going to save this for a second. And then I'm going to unclick the shuffle question option. Remember, I removed one question, I added one question, so 8's still the right number. And now I'm going to go back into edit. And now when I try clicking on this drag arrow option, it actually lets me move the particular pieces because I actually have the control over ordering them accordingly. Now, if I want to write my own question, not one that I've bought or released or whatever, but I want to write my own question in our system, I can choose this add question option. So let's go ahead and add a new question here. And let's say I'm going to create a fill in the blank question. So I'm going to say write the following in scientific notation. And I'm going to say 1,386 equals. And then I want it to be in scientific notation. So the answer is going to be 1.386 times 10 to the third. And I'm going to make this a superscript because I want it to be that piece. And that's going to be one of my answer pieces I want to fill in. And I'm going to click another one, highlight it, and click Add Answer option. And a couple of our different question types, in order to add the answers, you just want to highlight them and then click Add Answer. And that allows you to build that down there. Now, here, if let's say I had 1.386, but maybe it was 1.5 was my answer choice, or I just wanted to write this not in scientific notation, but this would be, let's say, 1,386 over 1,000, something like that. If you want both fractions and decimals, just click the plus sign to get your additional options there. But I don't need that, so we're going to delete it. This is where, if I was building inline questions, I want to make sure that I turn my feedback on, give feedback for a correct answer and an incorrect answer to help the students learn in the moment as you go. I don't need that right now, so we're going to leave that off. I can add any hints. So if I wrote a hint here, then I would just say hint number 1, and then I put the text there if I wanted it. I don't even need to say hint number 1, but that's going to show you that we have hints. I can have special formatting. I could put a video embedded as a hint, an image in the hint, all those options. Medium's fine. And because I'm adding to the existing concept, this is a scientific notation question. It's going to go ahead in here under the scientific notation piece. So I want to make sure that I leave that accordingly as is. I can't change that because I'm adding to an existing concept. If nothing was there, I could go ahead and, let's say, for those of you guys in the Certified Educator program, I could write a question for that, which is how I did this for those. Click search in my library. And let's see if it didn't like that. So introduction, there we go. We got some introduction here, introduction to cells. Those are some options. I could also search within CK-12 or search in my library for some different pieces as we go from here. So this is a demo account. It's not the one with the Certified Educator pieces, but I do have some lessons in here related to content. And as long as you have a read in your library, you can tag to that concept. But if you're adding, that concept is already fixed as you go through. So I can click submit. And I could choose to preview my question here, or I could click done. And then just like in our FlexBook, that question, looks like we have a little error there. So let's go back one. This is my scientific notation quiz in June. We'll go ahead and click on that. Then our library, just like it was, I can click edit. We're going to go ahead in here and double check this lesson. And we have 8 questions here. And it looks like I might have actually just lost a piece there. But this one right here, or this is the question. Let's hope this is one. I know that I've made this before, so maybe it was an error because I was trying to write the same question over again. But that question exists. Any question you've written has the ability to go from here. So this is a little bit different. This is a drag and drop question where I highlighted both parts and I dragged them into scientific notation and not scientific notation. But I'm just going to update that question. So any question that I have that was newly added, instead of showing up here, in this case it was the second one, it would have shown up at the bottom if I hadn't gotten an error there. And that would then allow me to drag the ones that I own and edit. I can edit further and adjust questions accordingly. So I'm going to go ahead and save that for a second. Probably wasn't happy with me trying to tag it to multiple concepts stuck in there, but we have our questions here and I can add a question set. So let me go ahead and add a new question set. I could create brand new questions, not tagged to a concept. That's where I'd want to make sure I tagged it to at least something in my library. I could browse, or I could simply search scientific let's see what other questions are available in our system. So we have some on the scientific method for physics. Not quite, so let's try notation. Let's see what else we get. We have the chemistry and physical science ones. Those ones are included, and I could pull a whole bunch from arithmetic as well if I wanted. So there's plenty more questions to work off of. It defaulted to 20. I can reset that to, let's say, 6. Click outside. It's going to give me that warning again. We're good. And then if I wanted these questions first, I would just hover and drag and rearrange it. Because this has been partially saved already, this now says update. Otherwise, it would say create. I can go ahead and use that. And then I'm going to go back to my quiz, and I'm going to just briefly show you options for using it. So here I could assign this quiz directly to my class. CK-12 or Google Classroom is fine. Or I'd access it from my library if you're using Canvas or Schoology and assign it that way. I can expand this ellipsis and pull an embed code here. So if I embed this as inline questions, I would just copy that embed code, and then I'd be able to use it in my lesson. Or I can go to my library, open my FlexBook, and either through the editor under related content, or we have a shortcut if you've saved all of your changes and we're good to go. And I can click on scientific notation, click start, and then I could choose to swap out this practice for a quiz. So if I click view practice, switch to a quiz, and this is why having it in the title helps. This title does nothing for me, this untitled piece. But I do want this scientific notation in June. I'm gonna scroll down and click add. And now instead of view practice, you'll see view quiz at the bottom, and students would get that 14 question quiz. I can pick a different quiz, or I can switch it back to practice with no problem at all. Here, if I edited that embed code, let's just go ahead and toss it in there so you can see what it looks like for 2 seconds as well. And while that is loading, here we go. I can go ahead and let's just put this quiz right here, embed media. We could preview it. We can insert it. And I can finalize this draft. Now, if I attach the quiz, like I did on the bottom right, this view quiz option, and I click assign up here, I would be assigning the whole lesson and the quiz. But if I just embed it right here, then students have to go through, they get it right, great. This is where some extra feedback might be helpful because they have to retry that question. In this case, they'd probably be okay. But if there's multiple choices, they would need a little more information to help them work their way through these quizzes. And 14 questions is probably a lot kind of within that inline piece. Last thing before we take some questions, as we go through here, if I clicked on my classes and open up an example class here, you can see within this class under reports, here we have quizzes. We can see different attempts. We can see the questions answered, and you can see all sorts of different pieces if you assign it individually or as part of a FlexBook 2.0 lesson. So Lindsay, how are we doing on questions?
You know, there's a few waiting for you, but I'm gonna suggest that we go ahead and we talk about what happens after customization. I know you want to get to some publishing options, and then our team continues to type in a bunch of answers, and we will stay on after the hour mark and answer any additional questions. So keep any questions that you have coming into the Q&A window. But let's go ahead and talk about what the options are after they've customized a FlexBook and created a quiz.
Sure. So as I said, and I showed you for a second, you can assign that lesson from a 2.0 section if there's an attached quiz there. You can even assign multiple sections at once, or you can assign related content or as like a quiz kind of separately from that particular piece. So assign that quiz, assign the matching practice, all sorts of options. And then just make sure you have students turn in that assignment so that you can see the report in the class report like I just showed you for a second. The option number 2 is if you want to share content. So let's say you made a FlexBook, you could use the share options to share external to CK-12 or to a CK-12 class. It's sometimes helpful to share the whole FlexBook, but then assign the individual sections so that kids have context for the larger book, but then they're actually assigning each particular piece and they're accessing each particular assignment so that that's what generates a report. You do have one other option you can see kind of on the right there for custom FlexBooks that you could download a PDF. And you can do the same thing for a worksheet for a practice or quiz. But remember that you're losing any of the feedback, any of the adaptability or interactivity as you go from there. Still an option, so something to keep in mind. Now for any custom FlexBook or non-quiz modality that you make, we do recommend and encourage you to publish that on our site. So to do that, you can click on the option in the table of contents of a 2.0 FlexBook, or the same option on the left side for any individual modality. This then starts showing up under community contributed content so other people can find it. And it makes it easier for students and colleagues to find and adds to the broader resources for the community. That's also a required step if you want to add your book to a schools page. So what is a schools page? This page is available. You can create one on CK-12, and it not only helps your students and colleagues easily find all the books from your school or district, but it helps others near you find and maybe even collaborate on content so you can see who's made books near you. Now, if you don't have a schools page up and running, just click on the Can't Find My School and then the Add to My School button and fill out the matching form. So once that happens, we'll get notification, we'll reach out to you, set up your account, whoever's going to manage that page with any final logistics, and we can kind of go from there to get one added. So Lindsay, I think you got some final pieces we want to cover before we jump back into questions.
Yes, so now's the time to ask any questions in Q&A. Katie, go ahead and take a few minutes to check out what people have been asking, and I just want to make you aware of a few programming notes here. We do have upcoming webinars listed at ck12.org/webinars. We launched CK-12 Flexlets recently as an answer to the summer slide that some students experience as a way to prep for the next school year or to make up for any gaps in learning that happened this past year, especially in light of COVID-19. If you want to learn more about the Flexlets, we have a special webinar happening on Tuesday, January 16th at 1 p.m. Pacific time. It's a short webinar, it's 30 minutes. It does not count for the Certified Educator Program, but it's all about Flexlets if you want to learn more about those. Then coming up on Thursday, June 18th is sort of our third in the series of Certified Educator Program webinars called Strategies for Using CK-12. So we've talked about the FlexBook 2.0 platform. Today you learned about customizing. And then this is really a putting it all together. How do you implement this at your, in your schools, in your districts? How do you as parents monitor your students? So I really encourage you to join us for that as well. We're also posting more dates all the time. So we will be running the 3 Certified Educator Program webinars again in July. So check back on the webinars page to register for any of those. But if you have taken them in different order, if today is your first and you need to do the FlexBook platform, just go to the webinars page and register. So like I said, if you have questions about the Certified Educator Program, ck12.org/certified is the place to go to find out about that. You can press register, and we really encourage you to join, especially since you have a webinar already under your belt. We do have a feedback form. We love getting feedback, and we read it and we take it seriously. So if you have just a couple of minutes and you're able to go to the tinyurl.com/CK12feedback1920, that's where we have a short survey that will let us know how we're doing and how well we can improve. If one of my teammates wants to go ahead and type that in the chat window for people to easily access, that'd be great. The tinyurl.com/CK12feedback 1920. Again, we want to thank everybody for joining us today. You are supported by the CK-12 team. We are so happy to help you. We answer our emails, so you can contact us at jumpstart@ck12.org. Don't forget to let your social networks know about CK-12 and your participation in the Certified Educator Program. We're on all the socials as CK-12 Foundation, or you could also use the hashtag CK-12 Certified. So that is it for our core programming. We've reached the hour mark, so if you need to go, thank you for joining us today. Go ahead and feel free to jump off the webinar. But for any of you who want to stick around, we are going to plow through a bunch more questions. So let me pass it back over to Katie.
Thanks, Lindsay. So I have this report open. I'm going to just open it one more time just so you can see what it looks like, because there was a question on how to get to that report again. So if you are using CK-12 classes, then you would go to the class page, open up whatever class you're looking for. In this case, my report's under Winter 2020, and then you would click on Reports. If you are using Canvas or Classroom or Schoology, Schoology report, this class report page is coming shortly. For Canvas and Classroom, you would click on the matching link within those platforms to access it, and that's a little different. So check out our webinars on how to use CK-12 with one of those learning management systems if you need that. But if you are using CK-12 classes, just open the class and click on Report, and you'll get this full report. If you open up the lesson itself, so that assignment that I have here, let's find an assignment with it, and I click on the link for that assignment, just like I would click on the same link within Google Classroom or Canvas or Schoology, I would be able to open this up, and then in the toolbar, I can click on Insights, go to my matching class, and then see the insights for my students as they go here, which includes your time spent, where you spent it, and the correct answer. So I think that answered, go ahead.
Yeah, sure. I'm just going to start throwing some questions at you. Is
Go
there
for
a
it.
way to limit when students have access to a quiz? Example, if I want my students to take a quiz on a specific date or time.
Yes. In that case, I would not swap this out for a quiz here. I would go straight to my library, and for that particular piece, I would assign it. So I'm going to go to my library for a second, and I'm going to assign it directly. Where's my quiz? And you'd want to pick the date. So right now for 2.0 lessons, you can post date them. But if I click assign to class, you would just wait and assign it to whatever they want, because they have no access to your library until you've assigned it to them and shared it with them. And we are working on putting, let's say if I pick this class right here, you can see the due date that I want it due. And we are working on options to have a different start date, so you could actually create that assignment beforehand. But that's the best way to do it. If you attach it to a FlexBook, they do have access to that before that particular date.
Okay.
I think we had one that kind of tied into that. Someone asked about using quizzes for exams or tests and how could they cheat, kind of ties into that same particular piece. The actually college professor that I know that was doing that I was working with, students were in her class. So it wasn't a home situation where there might be other people around. She was doing it actively within a classroom. I know that you would have to kind of monitor quizzes a little bit differently. I had friends who work at a school that were doing final exams over video calls the other day. And so they were kind of monitoring students' screens and different pieces. But it does get a little more complicated if they're not physically in a room with you. So hopefully that answers some suggestion. But beyond that, it would be like taking any homework home.
Okay, what does publishing mean for people who've created questions? Are they now available to everybody?
So when you add questions to our database, so if I'm creating new questions and adding them, you are giving us the rights to use those questions within here. So we could eventually pull some of those into our broader database. They're not automatically added to the database. Otherwise, we'd have zillions of random questions in different languages in our system that people would be stumbling across. So they're not automatically added, but they do have to fit under the same license within our platform. And let's say I made this scientific notation quiz and another teacher wanted to use it. I could share this URL at the top here with them, and they could open it up and they could click assign to class. It gets a little more complicated because it's not like a FlexBook that you can customize someone else's and go from there. But if you, as a department, had someone that made quizzes, you could share the link and another teacher could edit it. But they might need to create their own questions or a new quiz if they wanted something different.
Okay, while you're there, would you just show everybody again how they could get a PDF copy of a quiz if they needed to? There's that
Sure.
download PDF option there under the ellipses. Katie?
And it's under the, just where I clicked customize in the 2.0 lesson, there's a worksheet option for practice or quizzes there as well.
Okay, and what is your recommendation for if somebody needs a reader, they need text read to the students? What are your best recommendations for that?
Yeah, so I've had different schools. We don't have one built into our system. Some publishers that have like the audio version of their text is fixed, so that makes that pretty clean. You know, they can record an audio version. Our system, if you used a browser extension, I know like Text Help, I think it is, that has read and write. I've used some people seen Snap and Read as one that's a paid program. So there's different options out there that schools have been successful with that will read almost all of that text pretty cleanly as they go through. So I would recommend looking into some of those, or if you want more suggestions, email us. But the ones that can read a website aloud to a student should work on our site.
Okay, so on question creation, what does it look like to assign a standard to the question you created?
Sure, I can go ahead and click edit on here. And let's open up, I think the question I created was in here. So I want to make sure that I have access to the question that I'm working off of. I'll find the one with the little edit option. And within this, it's really just tagging on your part. So if I click the standards, I could type in, let's see, CCSS, I'm pulling up math standards, or NGSS. Let's see what our NGSS standards are in here. So model Earth. So if you know the actual standard like that, whatever that number is, that's what you could just add and search and include. We have Common Core standards for middle school and high school included, the same for science for NGSS. If you're looking for something else, let us know and we can see what we can do about that.
If a student takes the quiz created more than once, is the highest score recorded or just the last attempt or an average?
It's the last one that I choose to turn in. So I'm gonna click update so I don't mess up the system. And from here, we're gonna go ahead and save that. And let's go back to the classes that we have here. So in this class that we had, I think Lindsay took this quiz for me twice. Thank you so much. And when I click on reports, you'll see here on this quiz attempt that there are 2 quiz attempts. In this case, she clicked turn in a second time because she got a higher score. Otherwise, she got a, you're turning this score and your current score is blank. Are you sure you want to turn this in? So you have different pieces there, but they have the choice to submit the later score if it's higher if they want. And you as a teacher can see all of those scores, but the score reported is the final attempt that they submitted to you.
Okay, it looks like we had a follow-up question when you were talking about start dates. This person said, that's my question. I need to set up a start date and it's not available there.
We are working on it. So if you wanted to set up a start date for a 2.0 lesson with practice attached to it, or a quiz that you don't care when students have access to it, they can browse through that. Or you could create where you kind of publish different components, but that gets way more complicated. So if you need additional suggestions, email us at jumpstart@ck12.org and we can kind of work on your specific situation. And that's probably the best option. It looks like the last question is, are the TEKS included? I believe that our NGSS and CCSS are automatically included. If you're looking to add a different state standards into our backend, like the Texas TEKS, please email us at Jumpstart and we can see what we can do to include those if you plan to build a bunch of questions tagged to that particular set of standards. And if you're having any trouble, whether that is technical or practice-based, you can email us at support or at Jumpstart. We can't kind of have you guys verbally share or do anything within a webinar, but we can schedule a call or work with you to resolve any particular issues if you just shoot us an email and we'll get something set up.
All right, Katie. Yeah, I think we're going to call it there. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. We really appreciate all the questions. Email us at support@ck12.org if we can do anything further to help you. We hope to see you on a webinar next week. Thanks so much.